What's your strongest opinion or political opinion right now?
My strongest?
Yeah, because I'm kind of here to debate you, so I kind of want to hear what I want to hear what your biggest gun is.
Well, let's do it this way. Why don't you tell me something and we can, I have lots of opinions. So.
Awesome, all right. I don't think college is a scam, so.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know if you agree with that, but it's on all your shirts, so I would assume you agree with that.
I did write a book. So how about this? What would you say is a scam?
I mean, I feel like it's kind of on you to tell me what a scam is, because you're making the claim here, right?
Let's define what a scam. Can we agree on what a scam is?
Can you give me a definition first? Because you're the one making the claim.
How about if 40% of your customers don't get the product?
Sure.
Is that a scam?
Well, I mean, it kind of depends on like what your promise was when you gave the product in the first place, right?
Okay, so how about if you go to Chili's and 40% of your customers get food poisoning?
I kind of reject your equivalency here, because you're saying that there's an actual necessary like return on what you're asking for, when college in and of itself doesn't necessarily say that you're going to get this. There might be a hold on.
Graduation
there might be a cultural.
I'm talking about a graduation. So what is the national graduation rate?
I mean, you tell me.
59%. How many of you know someone that dropped out of college? Everyone hand goes up. Yes.
That's me.
41% of kids that go to college do not drop out.
Yeah.
What percentage of kids that graduate college get jobs that do not require a college degree 10 years after graduating?
I'm not sure.
Over half.
Okay.
So the degree is useless for over half.
I feel like hold on. You just spoke.
Debate those two things: graduation rate and whether or not a college degree is useful in the marketplace.
Well, I mean, you're kind of saying that like because people aren't, or like they're not, I guess, using their degree 10 years from like when they got it, that necessarily means that like college is useless. But you're kind of like forgetting, like if I do a job, right, like any of the people working here, right, they work for you maybe 2 years, work at Turning Point, right? They take skills that they learned with them to a new job. So not necessarily that they are using everything they learned at this job and then taking it to the next one. They could be just like doing something completely different. So you could say that maybe their work here was useless, but you probably wouldn't think that, right? I think it's kind of the same thing with college, except that like you might not necessarily use your degree, but you're using skills that you got at college for your next job. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to use it in the future.
I want to make sure you're understanding what I'm saying. The job that they get does not require them to have a degree, so they could have gotten that job out of high school.
Sure, but like
so they could have got the skills without $100,000 in debt.
You're kind of like skipping the midpoint here, right? Because like if you learn something and then don't necessarily like use it at your next job, that doesn't necessarily mean what you learned before was like useless.
Okay,
so I think you're predicating this on like that college has to be something that you use in the future, right?
The vast majority of students that enter college, what do you think they learn that is most useful in the marketplace?
Oh, that's a great question. There's so many things that you can use. You have interpersonal people skills. You have the ability to speak. You have communication classes where you learn how to make a speech, like I'm doing right now.
So you think college
things.
is necessary to learn to give a speech, or
I mean, probably not necessary, but I don't really know
so
where
it's not necessary. Okay.
Well, hold on, because my claim was never it's necessary. Your claim is that college is a scam, and I'm not saying it's necessary. You're just saying it's a scam. So you have to disprove that claim right now.
So a scam would be that if 10% or 20% of your customers do not get the value of what is being offered. For example, if half
define value.
The promise that is guaranteed. So for example,
what's the promise? Tell me the promise.
The promise if you go to Cal State Fullerton's website, it says achieve greatness.
So you can't achieve. So they're scamming people because they're not achieving greatness.
If you're going to interrupt me like every 10 seconds, this is not much of a dialogue.
All right,
so it's more like a prosecution.
Okay, I got you.
That's fine. I'm happy to. Whichever speed you want to go.
You're right. You're right. I'm sorry.
So you go to the website. It says achieve greatness to prepare students for the 21st century and an ever-evolving job market. According to statistics, half of graduates from this university will end up getting jobs of which they never had to go to college in the first place. They never had to get the piece of paper. They never had to go into debt, and they never had to spend 4 years here. If you went to United Airlines, if you went to a bank, and 10, 20, 30% of their promises were a lot different, or what they deliver were different than the promises of what they say, we would shut them down as a scam and saying they're lying to their customers. In fact, we do this all the time. We do this to websites that say, hey, take this pill and this supplement, and you're going to be XYZ stronger, you're going to lose all this weight. We shut down industries all the time for misleading their customers. So for example, my question for this, when you guys enrolled at this university, did you know that if you're studying sociology, more likely than not, you're going to end up in a job market where that piece of paper is not actually a factor in future employment? Was that part of when you signed up here? Did you know that? Most people don't actually.
I mean, personally, I did.
Okay, well then you're an informed consumer.
I'm going to, so I guess like what you're making this claim off of is that like college makes a promise, right? That you are going to be able to use your certificate that you get from the school in your future job, right? That's the claim that you're making from what I'm aware of.
One of several. Right? I wrote a whole book about why it's a scam.
Okay, but I'm just talking about what you're saying in front of me,
That's correct. So there's a promise made to a consumer, a big amount of money borrowed, and that promise is not fulfilled far too often. I would say 30 to 40% of the time minimum, 50 to 60% of the time.
Okay, so what you're saying right now is, because I asked you, I said, where do they specifically say that you are guaranteed a job, right? Because that's what you're saying.
Hold on, it's embedded in the experience. Anyone, is somebody here because they think their life is going to be worse because they go to college?
Definitely not.
Okay, the expectation of borrowing hundreds of thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars, potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars is I'm betting on myself to enrich my future. That's the whole idea why they're here.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not as if you walk around, you're like, well, it's a risk. Here at college, take, North African lesbian poetry and spend all this time here, learning why men can give birth. No, the idea is that I'm going to suck it up and go through these classes of the 4 most important years of my life where I have energy and I have passion, and then I'll be able to go get a great job. For certain degrees and measures, that's the case, but here's the part. In economics or in markets, you need informed consent. And far too often, students are not given informed consent for the debt burden, the time, and unfortunately, the dropout rates that are associated with college. Not to mention the ideological drivel that is.
Honestly, like, I think you were touching on an important point, which is that there needs to be an informed consumer. However, I think that, like, because my original question was, do you think college is a scam, right? And you tried to, like, give me, like, a metric for which, like, it's, like, making it a scam. But, like, I feel like you haven't said anything about, like, how, like, college doesn't promise you that you're going to get a job. So like, that's not, like, anything. So I feel
fair
like
enough. Let me go a little deeper.
You just proselytized for, like, 5 minutes. Come on. Like, can I get a turn to speak?
But let me ask you a question. How many of you are forced to take classes that are a waste of time that you do not want to have to take? Every hand goes up. So how is that not a scam? So they're being forced to take classes they don't want to take, that if they had other choices. So
here, hold on. Let's ask the audience again. Out of those classes that you didn't want to take, do you think that you learned anything useful at all? Even one thing? You learned nothing useful. Hold on. You guys learned nothing useful from even a class that you didn't like. Come on. Really?
So
you get. Come on. It has to be
the
something,
crowd is
right?
against you, man. So
well, I mean, I'm hearing a lot of yeses and nos. So I feel like
the
it's
young
kind of
lady
mixed
there
right
is
now.
yes, but hold on. So maybe you might have learned something. To your point.
Yeah.
Could you have learned that from watching YouTube videos or reading books or not having to go tens of thousands of dollars into debt?
You definitely might have. But listen, you're an employer, right? If you're an employer,
we employ 400 people.
If you're an employer, right, and you're looking for an accountant, right, you can take someone who is completely, and this is probably a pretty common talking point, but I kind of want to see what you say to it. You can take someone who is self-taught, right, has like their own credentials, and I'm sure you would interview them, right? You have 100 applicants, right? You're telling me you wouldn't screen on someone who probably, I don't know, like went to Harvard for like accounting? You know what I'm saying?
Well,
like,
if they went to Harvard, they would never work for Turning Point USA, like ever.
Says a lot about your organization, then, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. We don't have any sort of weight for credentialing.
So let me just hear your point. So like, what you're saying is like someone could be overqualified based on the degree that you think is worthless, right?
If you go to Harvard, I immediately think you're an intellectual idiot. Like, if you go to Harvard, I think you are infected with the worst possible ideas.
I mean, that kind of like goes against what you just said about them being overqualified to work for your organization, right?
Well, I never said overqualified. I said they're overcredentialed. There's a big difference in qualification and credentialing.
Well, I mean, you just talked about how you can get a credential outside of school, but in this case, someone could be
you can get wisdom and
job.
intelligence outside of school.
Oh, okay, that's a good one.
But you don't have to get a credential outside of school.
Wisdom and intelligence.
So there's a big difference. Yeah. Wisdom is the knowledge of things that don't change. Intelligence is the knowledge of things that do change. Okay. Intelligence is the processing power that allows you to find wisdom and factual knowledge. But to your point, so if there were applicants, we don't require college degrees for our applicants at Turning Point USA. But you say the accountant thing. The vast majority of kids that go to college are not becoming accountants, lawyers, doctors.
Okay, hold on, but
they're not.
Hold on, wait, but you're agreeing with me, right? You think that it's important that someone has a credential to do an accounting job, right?
But that, of course. But
okay, so hold on, wait. So
that's
we agree with that,
sliver
right?
of the reason why people go to college.
You don't. I'm not talking about a sliver. You said college is a scam, right?
I do. The
I'm holding you to that. You said college is a scam, right?
Yes.
And your own value criteria was that people couldn't get a job out of college, and you're literally saying that you can get a job out of college for being an accountant.
Let me make the shirt even more specific.
Okay.
College in its current form that affects the majority of students at the majority of colleges, not counting the sliver cases of doctors, nurses, lawyers, accountants that are able to avoid left-wing parasitic ideology, is a scam.
It's like the majority of people that come out of college.
But that doesn't make a good T-shirt, man.
All right, fair enough. I mean, I can do my own little like conservative ideologies, like making everyone like go back to like traditionalism, like 7th century, like I can do that too. Like, but we're not actually having a discussion if you just keep throwing buzzwords in here. So let me ask you this: so when you say college is a scam, right?
I gave you the longer explanation.
Yeah, you gave me the longer explanation, right?
Yeah.
But you kind of conceded already that parts of college are not a scam, right?
Well, it depends what you.
Again, but the parts that are a scam, but the parts I'm not going to read your book. Listen, I'm talking to you.
Then you're not arguing in faith.
Come on, listen. I'm arguing because I'm talking to you right now. I want to know what you're saying. I don't give a about your book. I don't care about your book. I just want to hear what you're saying to me right now. So here, listen.
Okay, you're getting a little upset. This communications course you talk about in college, you probably haven't learned very much about like how to publicly speak effectively. First rule of communication: don't swear at the person you're talking to.
I'm not swearing at you.
Really upset.
I'm not swearing at you.
So you're kind of proving the point that college is a scam, kind of by you making a fool of yourself in front of everybody. So you should go demand your money back from that communications professor.
So what I'm trying to get at right here is
Did they teach you to swear at people you talk to?
You said that college is a scam, right? Yeah. And we found a criteria in which college isn't a scam. Right?
Hold on. So again, I'm happy to direct you to my 300 page piece of literature where I dive into with necessary exceptions. But even if you go to become an accountant, there's a cost to that. There's an ideological cost, there's a time cost, there's a financial cost, and that's if you are able to avoid the inevitable indoctrination. A lot of other people want to ask questions. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Well, I'll just say to the audience out there, remember your degree isn't useless. You're learning something really important here. Even if you don't use it in your immediate future, I promise you're not going to regret your experience here. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. I couldn't disagree more. Thank you.